recently got a really good question about what's musically appropriate for an audition in terms of speeding things up and slowing things down. I think that's a really great question, and it's something you need to be thinking about. We all need to be thinking about. The first thing I'll say about that is that we definitely want to play musically, but playing musically means being in control of what we're doing. If you're not in control of what you're playing, then you're just making a mess. That's not musical. So the first step to preparing a really musical audition should be playing with really great time with a metronome. Even though if we intend in the end to play, to change the time a bit and make some musical decisions, that's fine. But we need to start off with a good solid bass line. And once we can play an etude and with great time, then we can decide what we want to do musically. If we cannot play it really steady, then it's just out of control. That's not musical. That's just out of control. So the first step is, again, making sure that you're playing with really great time, that your pitch is really steady, and your tone is really good. And then if you decide to change the time a bit, or maybe add a little vibrato, that's something you're deciding to do and you're in control of. A good way to figure out how much of this you should do, the best way to learn that is by listening a lot. Listening to great performers and listen with great detail to what they're doing, not just thinking this person sounds beautiful, but try to listen from a more like you're trying to dissect what they're doing. I like to use the example, if the general public goes to a magician show, they're just going to be amazed at the tricks. You know, wow, there's a rabbit coming out of the pocket and a bird's flying out of their hat or something like that. But if I'm a competing magician and I go to that show, I'm going to be trying to figure out exactly how they're doing the tricks. I'm going to be watching their hands very carefully. I'm not just going to be trying to be impressed by the show, but I'm going to try to learn every move they're doing from a technical standpoint. Okay, so let's check out a couple different excerpts here. This is Charlier Etude number 8, and this is definitely something that we would want to maybe adjust the time a little bit in a musical fashion. And a good basic rule would be that you can start phrases just slightly below tempo and then speed them up during the first couple notes, and then at the end of the phrases just slow them down a little bit. So I might think, if here's the tempo I want to play at, I might think da 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 dee da 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 dee da 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 dum da 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 da, so on and so forth. Now, I'm adjusting the time slightly, but there's always a steady beat going. You could always hear that beat. And in your mind, you need to hear that beat. That's important for you as a performer, because when you articulate a note, you have to decide where you're doing that. Or if you're making a slur, the slur has to occur at an exact point. Now, the audience may hear it and just think, oh, it's just flowing beautifully. That's great. That's what we want them to feel. But you're not the audience. You have to make these decisions and make them accurately. All right, so let's check out another etude. This is small etude number 25. This one would probably be more strict with the time. You'll see in the third line there, it says retard, so that would be slowed down just a little bit. But overall, on an excerpt like this, an etude like this, I would keep it a little stricter. Now, one thing I'll mention on this one, there's not a lot of great places to breathe. So I would consider then in, let's see, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th, 6th line, like where you have all these descending notes here in the first 3 measures. If I wanted to breathe before the restatement of the theme in the 4th measure there, maybe I would slow down a little bit before the breath just to kind of frame the breath in a more musical way. So I don't know these exact pitches, but if I was going to kind of sing as an example, like bop 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 bum bum bop bop bum 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 bum, I would just slow that down just a little bit. I don't think the judges would penalize you for this, because if overall you're playing with very steady time and then you slow down just a little bit before you breathe, they're going to hopefully have enough common sense to think, okay, this person's just making an artistic decision. It's not like they're just they're out of control with their time. Now, I'll make one more comment about playing musically. Let's look at the Charlier one more time. Don't get too carried away with it, and remember that even though that this is supposed to be played with somewhat flexible time, that Charlier took the time when he composed this to give you very strict notation. I mean, every slur is marked. There's all kinds of stylistic marking, note length markings. There's very strict rhythmic markings. So even though we're going to have a little flexibility, the composer had very strict intentions of what they wanted here, and you can tell that by how clearly everything's indicated with the rhythms they chose. So make sure that whatever you do in your interpretation, you're still expressing these rhythms. And as long as you're doing that, and you're not getting too overboard with the liberties you're taking, I think you'll be fine. Once you have a really good bass line worked out, and you can play these with the metronome, and you're starting to do some musical things with it, I would highly encourage you to record yourself to make sure that you're really doing what you think you're doing. Because a lot of times we can think we're making some musical decisions, and most often we're probably not doing as much as we think we are, or maybe we're doing way more than we think we are, and that could be with the vibrato, or that could be with just changing the tempo a little bit. So record yourself, listen, and that way you have a really good perspective to evaluate what you're doing, and that way you make sure that the judges are going to hear what your real intent is. So anyway, that's a really great question about how to interpret things musically. Please send me recordings if you would like my 2 cents on what you're doing, and keep the questions coming. I will be more than happy to address any concerns you have.